कुछ मानना चाह रही
आचार्य जी।
ओम सदाशिव समारंभां शंकराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् ओम सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। Okay, so we had completed the 9th verse of chapter 6. So we will now look at the 10th verse. So we will chant. Shri Bhagavanuvacha.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha.
Yogi yunjita satatam.
Yogi yunjita satam.
Atmanam rahasi sthitaha.
Atmanam rahasisthaha.
Ekaki yata chittatma.
Ekakiyata chittatma.
Nirashira parigraha.
Ashira parigraha.
Okay, just give me 1 second. I'll just. Okay, so first look at the words. Yogi yunjita satatam. Atmanam rahasi sthitaha. Ekaki yata chit atma. Nirashihi aparigraha. And the Anvaya will be Rahasi sthitaha ekaki yatachit atma nirashihi apparigraha yogi atmanam tatatam yuktaha. Sthitaha rahasi, remaining alone. So you take that together actually. Sthitaha ekaki rahasi, remaining alone in seclusion. Chit atma yataha, having mastered the chit, the mind, and here atma is the body, not the Satchidananda Atma. So technical meanings, chit is mind, atma is body. Yata chitta atma means having mastered the mind and the body, and nirashihi, without any sankalpas, expectations about the future, apparigraha, without any possessions. Yogi, this sadhaka, this yogi, atmanam satatam yunjita. So again, atmanam here is the mind, buddhi. So may this yogi constantly contemplate upon the mind, okay, or the buddhi, whatever. So again, we saw that topics are coming in diverse ways. So here we are coming to the antaranga sadhana, internal sadhana now, for the next 6 verses. Antaranga sadhana is what? The specific disciplines to be observed just before we start the meditation practice. While Bahiranga sadhana was what? The general disciplines to be observed by a sadhaka throughout the day. And here Krishna discusses different steps of meditation. And if you recall, we have had this discussion many times, one in Drigdrishya Viveka also, earlier in the Bhagavad Gita also. there are two types of meditation, two types of nididhyasanam. One is called samadhi abhyasa nididhyasanam, and one is called brahma abhyasa nididhyasanam. Okay. So samadhi abhyasa nididhyasanam is essentially the formal meditation using you're sitting on the posture, and then you're withdrawing your mind. Ashtanga yoga, basically. The Ashtanga yoga meditation using all those 8 steps, that is called samadhi abhyasa. And then there is brahma abhyasa, which is for the advanced seeker, where a posture is not necessary, but you can meditate at any time. So right now, we are talking about samadhi abhyasa. Krishna is talking about samadhi abhyasa. And samadhi abhyasa is usually prescribed for the beginner. The beginner has to follow the discipline. And without following this discipline, it's unlikely that the meditation will be very effective. Okay. So now we will put, he has talked about certain things. We will put them in a particular order, in a systematic order for our understanding. So the second word we take first, deshaha. Deshaha is the location, the place. And shuchau deshaha, it should be clean place, physically clean. And not only physically clean, it should be a place associated with spiritual thoughts, right? So don't meditate in your dining hall. If you meditate in the dining hall, what happens? Your thoughts will be associated with the food, with dal roti or bhaji pav or whatever. So don't just choose a place which is got a spiritual association. That's what's meant by Shushau Deshe. Not only physically, but mentally also, that there should be a certain amount of purity when you sit there. And Shankara adds here that Shuchau Deshe should be taken as a place which is naturally spiritual, like the banks of a sacred river, Ganga, for example, or in our daily transactions. Since that is not possible for all of us, we can artificially create an atmosphere. So you have the statues or photographs of the gods you worship. Then you light up a lamp, you put some incense sticks, artificially create a spiritual atmosphere. So Shuchau Deshe. Then Krishna doesn't talk about, but the moment you say Deshaha, what is the next associated term?
Kali.
Kala. Kala. So Krishna doesn't talk about Kalaha, and therefore we have to supply. So we have to say Kalaha, the time of the meditation. And traditionally they say Brahma Muhurat, early morning is ideal for the meditation. What is the advantage? All of yesterday's problems have been diluted by your sleep, and today's problems have not started. And therefore that time is Satvika Kalaha. So your tamas has been exhausted through the sleep, and rajas has not yet begun because you have not yet started activity. So what is left is sattva. And therefore, when tamas is exhausted and rajas has not begun, your mind is naturally sattvic. So this is the time which is called as Sattvika Kalaha, also called Brahma Muhurat. Normally, we will find in India at least that Brahma Muhurat is between, some people say 3:30, some people say 4 o'clock. 4 and 5:30 is fine. This is the time when your whole external world is quiet. In fact, even the birds have not begun to chirp. That is Brahma Muhurat. And there is one more aspect of Kalaha. That's just not the time. The quality is as important as the quantity, right? So Brahma Muhurat is fine. And then how long you sit is also necessary. But how long you sit is not as important as what is the quality of the attention that you are able to pay. So if you sit for too long, especially in the beginning stages, you will find that attention has been focused only for part of the time. And therefore, we said even for us as beginners in meditation, even 20 to 30 minutes is more than enough, providing that you are able to, as far as possible, focus for most of that time. Okay? So this is called Kala Niyama. The rules relating to Kala, the earlier was Desha Niyama, the rules relating to Deshaha. Okay. Then he talks about asanam. Where should you be seated? which means what? You should be seated, right? The fact that the moment you talk about asana, asana basically means sitting. It's a seat. In the old days, we used to say asana grahan kijiye, which means you come and sit down. Please come and take a seat, right? So asana is a seat, which means you should be seated. You cannot be lying down. You cannot be standing around. You can be walking around. And if you can sit on the floor, it is good. But if, like many of us, we can't cross our legs and not sit on the floor, any position is comfortable. Because remember, the posture is not the end all of this whole verse. The verse is not aiming at a perfect posture. It is aiming at the mind. The mind is the basic aim. That therefore posture is good if you can do it in the traditional one, but if you can't, it is okay. So Krishna says, have a seat, have an asanam. And when you talk about the asanam, that asanam consists of 3 layers. Okay, so that you will see there, Chaila, Ajina, Kushottaram. So there are three layers, Chaila, Ajina, and Kushaha. And Uttara. That word, the last word is Chaila, Jena, Kushaha, and Uttara. So what does it mean? Chaila is a piece of cloth. Ajina means deer skin. Basically, it's deer skin. And Kushaha is what is also known as dharba grass. That very pointed grass. And he says you put Chaila, Jina, and Kushatara and Kushaha. So you might, and Uttara is what? Uttara is to specify that it should be in reverse order. Like normally we follow the instruction, Chaila, Jina, Kushatara. What will you do? You will put the cloth first, and then the grass, and then the cloth. So, sorry, you will put the cloth first, then the deer skin, and then the grass, with the grass on top. So to prevent that, Krishna says Uttaram, which means you put it upside down, which means what? First you put the grass, which is pointed, then you put a deer skin over it so that you don't get hurt with it, and then you put a cloth over it. Anyway, this is specifics of how to do the asana, how to make the asana, which is not really relevant today, but you can make the asana very simply with, Mr. Cushion also. But just for information, dharba grass mats are available. Okay, like if you go to some of this, in fact, I just bought one yesterday from a place called the Giris in Chennai. So if you go there and see, you will find that dharba grass mats are there. Dharba grass mats are traditionally prescribed for meditation, so it's a good thing to have. And of course, dharba grass is not very soft, so you don't have deer skin, doesn't matter. You put some cloth over it, and therefore you get a asana. And so Krishna is specifically saying here that you should have your own asana. So your asana, that seat, should not be shared, right? In spirituality, some things are not meant to be shared. These are personal items of use. So this is your own asanam, your own little seat. And if you're using a cushion, then that also should not be shared. So the idea is have your own seat for meditation purposes. And then it should not be too hard and too soft. If it is too soft, what will happen? Your back will bend. If it is too hard, it will pain. Okay? Then don't let it be too high or too low. If it's too high, you will fall off. If it is too low, you will find that the ants, etc., will be climbing over your body. So this is the discussion. We will, of course, look at the exact words later. This is what general discussion is. Then the third one is Sharira Sthiti, the body condition, which means you should sit steadily. And if you sit steadily, you should have a maximum base area. So usually we prescribe a cross-legged posture. And then keep the body and the neck and the head straight, and then let it relax. The whole body is relaxed, not tense. This is the Sharira Sthiti, the posture for meditation. Then the fifth one is Samyama Pranaha, even breathing. The breathing should be relaxed and even and smooth and even, because your breathing and thinking are connected. And if you have shallow breathing or quick breathing, your thoughts are also rapidly moving. So we have a verse which you have done, Shakayor Dvai Shakti Mulaka. Do you remember from which text? Shakayo Dvai Shakti Mulaka. Both spring from a single root.
Atmabodha.
No.
Bhajagovindam.
You can't just
Upadeshasaram.
Upadesha Saram. Okay. So both sing, you should actually remember all these texts we have done, they're all very basic texts for understanding Vedanta in detail. So both spring from a single root, Shakayor Dvai, Shakti Mulaka. Both branches come from the same Mulam, which is Shakti. The thoughts are connected to Jnana Shakti and the prana is connected to Kriya Shakti. And both these are connected to the basic Shakti, which is Maya. Shakti Mulaka is Maya. Shakayor Dvai is two shakas, two branches. One branch is Jnana Shakti, one branch is Kriya Shakti. They are all connected to the basic root, which is Maya. To give an example, so if both breathing and thinking can be thought of as the legs of a table, if you pull one leg, the rest will also come. You do not pull all the legs. So in this case, there are only two. What it means is if you pull one, the other one will also come along with it. That's why a branch connected to one root. If you pull one branch, the other one will also automatically come. Therefore, the connection is being shown. Breathing and thinking are very closely connected. Then the next one is Indriya Nigraha. We saw in Tattva-bodha. Sense organs are capable of influencing the mind because they are the door to the mind. And all the five sense objects, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, all enter your mind where? Through the sense organs only. And that is why when you sit in meditation and somebody is making pav bhaji in the kitchen, when the meditation is no longer Easwaran Dhyanam, it becomes pav bhaji Dhyanam. Because through your nostrils, the smell comes in, right? And that's why we say have a pure place with spiritual place. So that was Indriya Nigraha. All these ideas are not new. They have been done many times in different ways. And Krishna is repeating here. So Mano Nigraha is the next one. The mind has to be withdrawn from all the worldly fields, taken away from all the worldly roles that you play in your life. Your husband, father, mother, child, all these, shishya, everything you have to withdraw from. Why is it necessary? Because in every role, there is a connected setup. There is a connected set of anxieties, there is a connected set of worries. And each role that you perform invokes all these troubles and anxieties and worries. And therefore, when you sit for meditation, you should shed all those roles. All those roles should not exist for you at the time of meditation. When you leave the chappals outside the meditation room, that is why you leave chappals outside, right? The chappals are very symbolic. With those chappals, you are leaving your basic, all the setup which you have, the entire roles which you have, all the relationships which you have, those are the two chappals, represented by two chappals. And therefore, as Kaivalya Upanishad says, mentally become a sannyasi for the period of that particular dhyana. And if you definitely have to have a relationship, if you can't drop all your relationship, you can have only two, either the Lord or the Guru, or of course Shastram also. You can have three. You can have God, Guru, Shastram. Because in these relationships, there is no attachment, there is no demand, there is no problem. And that is why Kavila says, Gurum Pranamya. Before you start the meditation, you invoke the Guru. Because when Guru is invoked, the teaching is invoked. When the teaching is invoked, Ishvara is invoked. And therefore, when you are meditating, meditate as a sannyasi, not as a shishya or as a bhakta. Meditate as a sannyasi. You have no roles excepting a sannyasi's relationships, which are basically only three: Ishvara, Guru, and Shastra. And when you leave your chappals outside, you are not leaving it permanently, right? 30 minutes. You tell the Lord before you enter that 30 minutes, I'm handing over my wife and kid and all to you. When you come inside, the Lord will look after them properly, better than you. Then the eighth one is Buddhi Nishchayaha, conviction regarding the necessity of meditation, conviction regarding the utility of meditation. I should be convinced of that. I should be absorbing the teaching. Without the conviction of the knowledge of Atmajnanam, this meditation is a mechanical routine. You may get some peace of mind because of the focus of the mind, but that is only transactional. As long as you're meditating, you'll be peaceful. The moment you get up, your troublesome mind is back. And therefore, Shastric study becomes very important. And if you study, you will know how important Shastra is and how important Nididhyasanam is. And therefore, it is called Buddhi Nishchayaha. So, these are the 8 steps which are very specific preparation just before meditating. And it is called Antaranga Sadhana. Internal or just the steps to be done before you start the meditation. Bahiranga is the usual 24/7 which you do daily to get you into this religious life which a meditator should have. Okay, so with this now let's look at the words here. In this particular sloka, it says Yogi Yunjita Satatam. Yogi should regularly practice meditation. So meditation is not on every Sunday or every Saturday. It's like a physical exercise. No benefit, just like no benefit can be gained out of once in a way exercise, no benefit can be gained by once in a way meditation. So satatam, regularly. Satatam atmanam. So atmanam is the mind over here. One should apply the mind to meditation. And rahasi sthitaha, in a secluded place, in a lonely place. And Shankara says, adds of course, that mountain or cave is rahasi sthitaha. So we don't have mountains and caves. I mean, we have, but the likelihood of being able to go there every morning is very, very remote. So you can take it as a place where nobody will disturb you. So even your own room or the balcony or the terrace, something like that. And if you go early in the morning, early enough in the morning, you'll find that nobody is there. You'll be alone. Right? And then he says ekaki. Ekaki, Shankara says asahayaha, without a partner. So very clear. Only one person should go, and that is only you. Okay. But note that Shankara says ekaki means sannyasi. He says this is what Krishna means, that you have to be a sannyasi before you can meditate. You know, that's Shankara's view, because according to Shankara, if you're not a sannyasi, you're not a human being. So a little bit, you know, of a very extreme view. What do we do, all grahasthas? So we take it as you are able to reduce 4 things in your life. Responsibilities arising out of relationships. Obligations arising out of relationships. Possessions, the relationships themselves. And all the transactions that are arising out of relationships. So you can remember it's PORT, possessions, obligations, responsibilities, and transactions. These have to be reduced. And if you can reduce this, then it is as good as being a sannyasi. Right? So this, you can take it as a person who is able to reduce the relationships or rather the transactions, responsibilities, obligations arising out of his possessions, which are relationships. So those you have to be able to reduce. When you do that, then you are as good as a sannyasi, then you should be able to meditate. And of course, as I said before, Krishna doesn't talk about the time, so we have to supply Satvika Kale in a correct time. And then the next word is Yata Chit Atma. Yata Chit Atma means, Chittam means the mind, Atma in the context means the physical body, Yata means the mastery or the discipline, and therefore Yata Chit Atma means person who has mastered his mind and body. Okay, you have to be very careful here. The Atma in the first line here of this verse, Patatam Atmanam, right, is different from the Atma of the second line, Yata Chittatma. What is the difference?
In the first line, it refers to the mind. In the second, it refers to the body.
Yeah, so that that is the way that Shastra is, and so one has to be very alert about what is the meaning that you are taking. So in the first line, we said Atmanam, that is the mind being still. In the second line, the mastery is over the body, because it has to be taken as a body because there is a compound Chit Atma, and Chit is the mind over here, so Atma is the body. Okay. And if you take it otherwise, then it becomes Punarukti Doshaha. Therefore, Atma is body, and Chittam has to be taken as the Antakaranam, the full mind, the entire mind. Right? Why does Shankara say that you have to take Chittam as Antakaranam? What is the confusion if you don't? All Tattva-bodha. What is the confusion if you don't take Chittam as full mind, Antakaranam? Guys,
Because then it only then will it include all the aspects of the mind.
no. Because the Chittam has another meaning in Vedanta also. What is that?
Yes.
Consciousness.
Consciousness.
It is a memory, right? So the four parts of the Antakaranam, one is Chittam, it's memory. And it should not be taken as memory, which is a function of the Antakaranam. And the Shankara says, make sure this is not a function he's talking about. He's talking about the whole mind, and therefore take Chittam as Antakaranam. So in short, the one who has managed to discipline the mind and the body, who is dead to the world during Nididhyasanam, he is dead to the world. He is Yata Chittatma. Okay. Now, those of us who are familiar with the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras know that there are Ashtangas: Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. And if you look at this verse, you can find that Krishna is talking about all of them. So Yama and Niyama together is the regulation of conduct. So characterless mind, regulation of your conduct, regulation of your character. Because a characterless mind is always a disturbed mind, since it is constantly under the influence of various desires. So Yama Niyama, 1 and 2 of the Ashtanga, is conduct regulation. 3, the asana is keeping the body fit, because you can forget your body only when the body is fit. So may you keep your body fit by practicing yogasana. That is also implied here. Right? Asana here is 2 things: seat and keeping the body fit. Then nirashihi. So ashi means desires. Nirashihi is without desires. And in the context of our discussions, we have to take this as without binding desires, because you have a mind. Desires are bound to come, and therefore you cannot totally distance yourself from desires. They are bound to come. So by appropriately handling those desires, you should retain only those desires which do not bind you, which do not create anxiety in your mind, right? And of course, if you ask how to get rid of the anxiety, there is only one way: Sharanagati, surrender to the Lord. Therefore, Krishna is saying that at least during the time of this meditation, surrender all your desires to me, or desires at the feet of the Lord, so that you have a calm mind. Okay. So one way of doing it is to mentally, surrender. Another way for people who want a more concrete way is to write down those desires on a piece of paper and put it at the feet of the Lord, right? And then say that this is a surrender. That's one way of doing. Then aparigraha. Parigraha means possessions. Aparigraha means non-possessions. And that basically simple, austere living. Why simple living? Because if I have a lot of possessions, then my mind is always bothered about the possessions. So first there is the problem about getting the possession, then there is a problem about maintaining the possession, then there is a problem about losing the possession, because yoga kshemaha. Yoga is always followed by shema. Yoga means acquiring, shema means maintaining, and therefore reduction of yoga is called nirashihi here. Reduction of kshema is aparigraha. In short, simply lead a simple life. And Shankara in his commentary reduces aparigraha to sannyasa. For Shankaracharya, any word can be ultimately reduced to sannyas. Even as a sannyasi, one must know, even a sannyasi, certain minimum positions have to be there, right? But even in regard to those possessions, you should think of yourself as a trustee of the Lord and not as the owner of those possessions. So that is the idea here. Whatever you possess, at least during the time of the Nidhi Dhyasanam, the thought should be in your mind that none of them belongs to me. Even my children, grandchildren, they don't belong to me. They are Ishwara's children only. And therefore reduce possessions. And then with regard to those minimum possessions that we have, reduce the mamakara, the sense of ownership. And think of yourself as a trustee. Right? Okay, then ekaki. As I said before, sannyasa is what is the meaning given to ekaki by Shankaracharya. If so, why say aparigraha? So that's a good question, right? Because it should occur to us, but it doesn't occur to us. So Shankara picks it up and says, ekaki means sannyasa. Why? Because sannyasi has no possessions. So if by saying ekaki you mean sannyasi, the sannyasi anyway has no possessions, why say aparigraha? Because aparigraha also means no possessions. And therefore is not Krishna guilty of punarukti doshaha, repetition? Shankara says no. Shankara says this is a red alert. It's a warning to sannyasis that even if you are a sannyasi and therefore you have minimum number of possessions, at least maybe one dress and one plate to eat from, but you should be alert and keep yourself having minimum possessions. Why does he say this? Because there are sannyasis who have huge ashram properties in the name and hefty bank balances. And Krishna seems to have anticipated this happening in this era, in Kala Yuga. And therefore he gives us warning that even if you are a sannyasi, make sure that you have only minimum possessions. And even if you have minimum possessions, make sure that there is no mamakara, there is no ownership regarding the possessions. Okay, with this commentary on that verse is over. Any questions there? All right. So then,
Om Acharya ji.
yeah.
Acharya ji,
Acharya ji, I really get confused with this aparigraha thing. Is it really only mental or is it?
No, parigraha basically means having possessions. Aparigraha means not having.
So it's about physical as well.
Yeah, that is for the sannyasi, right? As a householder, you will have possessions. As a householder, you should have the attitude of a trustee. Like, I am not the owner of the things. It doesn't mean that you are careless about those things because you are a trustee for the Lord. Therefore, you take care of it. But you avoid thinking of it as mine, mine, mine. That mine thing is what is being focused upon here. Sannyasi, in any case, doesn't have possessions.
Mm-hmm.
But as a grahastha, you will have, but mentally, you should be a sannyasi.
Okay, Acharya.
Yes, Lataji.
Om Acharya ji.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the asana, and you said it should be deer skin or it is not necessary.
Deer skin was in those days, deer skin was used so that the dharma grass is very prickly in nature, You cannot sit on it. They got very sharp ends, they'll poke you. So you put a deer skin which is slightly thick, it is thick, and therefore the grass won't poke you. And because the deer skin, and then you should not sweat on top of it, therefore you put a cloth. That is the instructions of the old days. But if you read commentators, they will tell you that, this deer skin is to be obtained from an already dead deer. So you should not be going and hunting a deer for it. Okay. So anyway, all those things are irrelevant because for us, we have plenty of thick materials, right? So you can put.
Yeah.
And anyway, you don't have to go and search for the darba grass. You just put a nice cushion and a little blanket underneath it, and that is fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Om Acharya ji, I have a question.
Yes, Rashmaji.
As you said, ki aparigraha is for the sannyasi. But
No, that is for the meanings are different. For the sannyasi, it is literally having no possessions. For the grahastha, it means that whatever you have, you don't have a mamakara for it. You don't have ownership of this is mine, that you don't have.
So in that case, we can have a limited possession also, right?
Even
mean,
towards the limited possession, you should be having no mamagara.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so now we look at the 11th verse. So we'll sit on it, we'll read it. Shuchau deshe pratisthapya
शुचौ देशे
शुचौ देशे प्रतिष्ठाय
स्थिरमासनमात्मनः
स्थिरमासनमात्मनः
नात्युच्छ्रित्तं नातिनीचं
नातिनीचं
शैलाजिनकुशोत्तरम्
शैलाजिनकुशोत्तरम्.
So in the preliminary, remarks, I already addressed all these various items, but now we are looking at the individual meanings of the words. Okay, so now Shankara says this verse actually Krishna is giving certain specific rules about asana, ahara, and vihara. Asana is asana, ahara is eating, and vihara is recreation. So these are three rules are being given over here. So now look at the words. Shuchau deshe. So in the previous sloka, one idea was given. Rahasi sthitaha. You have to be alone, right? Rahasi sthitaha was in the previous verse. And because he says yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasi sthitaha. That was in verse number 10. One idea was given. You should be alone. You should be in a secluded place. Shuchau deshe. And here he's adding to that rahasi sthitaha, secluded place, he is adding Shuchau deshe. So Shuchau deshe literally means should be physically and spiritually clean. Because spiritually clean, because a place should trigger religious thoughts to your mind, not thoughts of food or anything. And Shankara adds here saying that Swabhavataha Samskrita means naturally clean place, like the banks of the Ganga or a cave in the Himalayas. And as I said earlier, if you are, of course, as most of us will not be able to do that, we can take the place as a place which we are artificially making sacred by adjusting the environment. You light a lamp, you light agarbatti, you light the incense sticks, and then you put some photographs or some Shivalingam, all that you can do. Make it a place which is basically a puja room or a meditation place. You can take that as Shuchau deshe. And of course, Rahasya Sthita has to be added. When you're sitting for meditation, you should not have people around you. Then Asanam Pratisthapya. So that word, if you're looking at Thira, Asanam, Atmanam is the last word. So from there, you take out Asanam and put it in front of Pratisthapya. And therefore, you have Asanam Pratisthapya. And as I said, Asanam can have two meanings. One is the cushion, the seat, the actual seat. And first he talks about the seat. He says, Chaila Jina Kushottaram. So this I discussed already. Chaila Ajina Kushaha Uttaram. 4 words. Chailam means a piece of cloth. Ajinam means a deer skin. And again, I'll say it is not hunting for the deer. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
now you're back.
just
Little bit. Now you're
We
back.
lost you for a few seconds, Acharya.
Yeah, somebody signed in on my thing, I think. Anyway. So, okay, where was I? So, Shailam is a piece of cloth. Ajinam is deer skin used for insulation, basically against the conditions of the earth. And again, I'll say we don't hunt for deer. Traditionally, it says you use the skin of a deer which has died of natural causes. But since all that, is difficult to go and find, you can simply take it as a thick cloth, neither soft nor hard. Then kusha grass. This kusha grass is darba grass, which is used for, which is considered a very sacred grass. And those of you who have done any puja, you will know that they tie a little bit of grass ring around your finger when they do the puja, right? That is called darba grass. So that grass is a very pointed grass, very, very, can hurt you if you are not careful. So that's called kusha also. Darva, kusha are the same thing. The grass is sacred. Now the problem here is Krishna says chaila ajina kushotaram, implying that first you place the cloth, then the skin, and then the grass. So to avoid this misinterpretation, he also say uttaram, which means you reverse the whole idea. And remember that in Sanskrit there is a word kushagraha buddhihi, the intellect which is sharp like the tip of the kusha grass. That's to say the grass will prick you, and that is why you should reverse it. Shankara, of course, very specifically says Pathakramat viparita, reverse the order in the text. So your pataha, your kramaha, and the textual order has to be reversed. So in Shastra there is a the usage Pathakrama and Arthakrama. Krama is a sequence, order. So Pathakrama means textual order. Arthakrama means logical order. And there is a rule in interpretation that wherever the Pathakrama, the textual order, is what you call contradictory to the Arthakrama, the logical order, then you have to take the logical order, Arthakrama, as correct. Right? So we have to apply the Arthakrama here and not the Pathakrama. So here too, you reverse the order, and therefore kusha should be at the very bottom, and cloth should be on the top, deer skin should be in the middle. Then, how should you fix the asanam? He is giving instructions. Natyuchittam, na atichrittam, not too high, nati nicham, na ati nicham, not too low. If it is too high, what will happen? You might fall and you might hurt yourself. If it is too low, insects may come. Also, if it is too low, the dampness of the ground might cause your body to go into have a cold or something. So, should be fair enough, should be fairly distant from the ground. And then, atmanaha asanam. Atmanaha asanam. Right? Here again, Atma doesn't mean Satchidananda Atma. Why? Because you cannot associate Atma with any asanam. Atma is sarvavyapi, all pervading. Therefore, Atmana here has to be used as a reflexive pronoun, which means you yourself. The usage of the word I myself is usage as a reflexive pronoun, referring to me, which means the object of the sentence and the subject of the sentence are the same. When that is the use, that pronoun is called a reflexive pronoun. So, Atmana here is a reflexive pronoun, meaning that your own asanam you should use, which means every meditator should have his own private exclusive asana. Right? So there are very many traditional things. Like in our tradition, for example, we don't share chappals. Are you familiar with that? In our tradition, chappals are not shared. Okay. And then what else is not shared? Toothbrush is not shared. Right? So many things are like chappals not shared, toothbrush not shared. So these are all Shastra Vidhi. They all are things which one should not share. In that, you also include asanam. One should not share your seats. And asanam pratisthapya. One has to firmly fix that asanam so that it doesn't wobble and won't fall. And sthiram pratisthapya. Fix it very firmly. It should not swing. It's not a swing. It has to be completely and firmly fixed so that when you sit, you don't wobble and your balance is not disturbed. So 3 items we have seen. We discussed all these 8 before, but now we have seen 3. Desaha, asanam, and kalaha, of course, we have supplied. So 3 we have seen. What next? So we will look at the next verse, the 12th verse. We will chant that. Tatraikagram manakritva
मनः कृत्वा
yatachitendriya kriyaha
यतचित्तेन्द्रियक्रियः
upavishyasane yunjyat
उपविश्यासने युञ्ज्यात्
yogam atma vishuddhaye.
योगमात्मविशुद्धये
adjust this a bit. All right. So now look at it. Tatra asane upavishya. Tatra asane upavishya. There, having fixed the asanam, upavishya, you should sit on that asanam. And how should you sit? Yata chitta indriyaha akriyaha. So chitendriya is chitta indriyaha, akriyaha is there. Yata means having mastered. Chitta indriya, chitta means mind, indriya means sense organs. So yata chitta indriya, having mastered the sense organs, and therefore akriyaha. Mastery of sense organs means what? That sense organs are under your control. And therefore, what should you do? Akriyaha. Your functions are being restrained. Their functions are right now absent. So akriya is just an adjective showing that yata chitendriya, mastery of chitendriya means that you have made the functions non-functional at that moment. And why is it non-functional? For dhyana sadhana only, right? And then Shankara says, akriya means sarva vishebhya upasamhratya. Upasamhratya means withdrawal. So sarva vishebhya, withdrawing from all vishayas, from all anatma you withdraw. And when we say all anatma, we talk about 5 things. Remember, profession, possession, family, body, and mind. If you look at anatma, your entire anatma universe can be converted into these 3: profession, possession, families or relationships, body, and mind. And therefore, you should withdraw your sense organs from all these 5 anatmas, pancha anatmas. So don't think of your promotions, don't think of your losses, of your cars, of your health. Don't deliberately think about it. But of course, in meditation, these thoughts might come uninvited, right? And if they come uninvited, we saw that in an earlier chapter. Let me not nourish them. I will not encourage these thoughts. I can't stop the rise of uninvited thoughts. I will not feel guilty about it. I will just ignore it and not nourish it. So this is the auto suggestion I start with, where I will not think about all these things. In spite of that, if these thoughts come, I simply ignore them. And thereafter, what do I do? Mana ekagraha kritva. I make my mind a focused, one-pointed mind. And yogam yunjat. So here, yogam means dhyanam. You have to practice dhyanam, right? Now, you might ask, what is the purpose of this dhyanam? The answer to that is the last word, yogam atma vishuddhaye. Atma vishuddhaye means for the chitta shuddhi, for the purity of the mind. And Shankara says very clearly in his commentary, atma here means antakaranam, mind. Because atma cannot possibly mean Satchitananda Atma. Why?
No purification required for that.
For
Already
Satchitananda Atma cannot be purified. And there is no
Yes.
impurity possible, so where is the question of purification? And therefore, Atma here, Shankara says, has to be taken as Antakaranam, the mind. Vishuddhi means purification. And therefore, this meditation is only for Chitta Shuddhi, for Jnana Yogyata. Okay. Now, a question should come up. What is that question? Are we not talking about Nididhyasanam? Right? Do you see what question is coming up? Are we not talking about Nididhyasanam? Then why does Krishna say Atma Vishuddhaye? What is the question going to be? What is the possible question?
Because Nididhyasanam requires, that is the prerequisite.
Mm.
Can you elaborate?
Maybe Nididhyasam means you're already on a path of Jnana Yoga where this Chitta Shuddhi is supposed to be there or acquired there. And if this is the
Right.
last phase, how are we going to again get Chitta Shuddhi?
Right. So you are talking about a Nididhyasana yogi, which means that Nididhyasana means what? Dwelling on the fact that I am Brahman. And dwelling on the fact that I am Brahman means what? I have gone through Shravanam and Mananam. And before I go through Shravanam and Mananam, What is the stage? Karma yoga and upasana yoga. Chitta Shuddhi has to be there before you come to Nididhyasanam. Then why does Krishna say this? So Shankara says, you look at the context. There is only one interpretation. Vishuddhaya does not mean mala nivrittihi. It does not mean vikshepa nivrittihi. It means viparita bhavana nivritti. Okay. So this Vishuddhaya has to be taken as getting rid of your habitual thinking patterns. Right? They are called vasanas. They are called deha vasanas, deha abhimana vasanas, called viparita bhavana, called viparyaya, also called habitual thinking patterns. What is the difference here? That your mind is already free of mala, which was addressed by karma yoga. It is already free of vikshepa, which is addressed by upasana yoga. Now you are a jnani. You have shravanam, you have mananam, both have completed. You know without any doubt that you are Brahman. So your Brahma jnanam is samshaya rahita jnanam, knowledge without any doubts. What is there to be now changed? Even if you are a jnani, remember that you have been having the thought that I am a body mindset. I'm a body, I'm a finite person. For years together, for decades together, for several lifetimes together, you've had that particular thought. And therefore, that thought is very deeply rooted in the subconscious. Right? So even though consciously you know that you are Brahman, this thought has not yet been driven into the subconscious. Right? I can give you an example which I often use. Supposing you have a car, right? Now you are in the habit of placing the car keys, let us say, in the front room in a drawer. And every time you step out, you first go to the drawer and you open the drawer, take out the keys, and then go to the car. Okay, fair enough. Now, you have just, let us say, sold that car. Okay, you have got into a thing and you have sold the car. Now, when you have sold the car keys are already gone. But next day in the morning, out of habit, what do? You get up and go to the drawer. Does it mean that you don't know that you have sold the car? In your conscious mind, yes, you know that you have sold the car. But that knowledge is still at the top of conscious mind. It has not gone into the subconscious mind. And therefore, the whole old thinking pattern that my car is with me and this key is in the drawer, that still remains. This is called viparita bhavana. Or in this case, car vasana. The car is there, you still think it was not there. And therefore, viparita bhavana is remaining in the triangular format not because of lack of knowledge, but because of habitual thinking pattern. Remember that triangular format can influence you in two ways. One is, if you don't have the knowledge, then definitely you are in the triangular format. One is you have got knowledge, you have samshaya rahita jnanam, doubtless knowledge that you are Brahman, but your habitual thinking patterns have not gone. And therefore, you are still in triangular format at the unconscious, at the subconscious level. And Nididhyasanam is meant for removing those patterns. Therefore, whether it is study of the scriptures, before study of the scriptures, your meditation is for Chitta Shuddhi. After study of the scriptures also, meditation is still for Chitta Shuddhi, some sort of purification, not for knowledge, not for realization. So with this, we'll stop for today in case any questions are there.
Acharya ji.
Yeah.
Acharya ji, I have two questions. So
Yes.
first of all, like we were talking about meditation, so it was saying that preferably it should be done in solitude. But
Yes.
in we have seen in ashram and other places, we do the group meditation also.
That is
So
not
provided
at
the
all,
option which
it is not at all recommended. You do it in an ashram because they are teaching you. But for meditation purposes, if you are looking at serious meditation, you should be always alone.
okay.
Ashram, it's a group environment. It lends a lot of spirituality. It keeps you motivated. But if you already come to Nididhyasanam, all those questions are not relevant for you. You don't need to be motivated. You are self-motivated because you already know at the conscious level that you are Brahman, and therefore you don't need any motivation. All you need now is to get rid of those vasanas, to assimilate the knowledge, and therefore you will do it on your own without any meditation, any motivation.
So basically, group meditation is for motivation thing.
It keeps you, like, if you must have known, if you are sitting in an ashram, getting up in the morning and coming to the meditation hall is a very difficult thing. And therefore, when everybody does it together, you are bound by that. I also need to go. And therefore, the habit is being formed.
Because why I asked this question, because somewhere I heard कि वो कहते हैं ना जोत से जोत जली, if someone is enlightened with his light, other one also gets enlightened.
We're all best to disregard this kind of knowledge. Nobody else can enlighten you. Only you can enlighten yourself.
Yeah, got it. And Acharya ji, second question is that so much emphasis is given on asana. So I understand that is only for meditation, but just a query like if we go to some public place, a restaurant or somewhere, and so we should be cautious that the someone who was sitting there was maybe he was not on a right state of mind, and immediately I go and sit there, so there can be some energy which can affect me. So should we be cautious about it, or it's only for a meditation thing, asana?
Really speaking, nobody's energy can affect you. Okay, of course, if you're in a place which is constantly full of negativity, it will affect your mind. But if you're going to sit in a restaurant for some time, half an hour, 45 minutes, first of all, you don't know whether a person is negative or not. How do you choose who's negative and who's positive? One shouldn't get involved in too many of these things. If you are afraid of that, you shouldn't go to restaurants. But if you go to restaurants, just accept the fact that everybody is different. I can't change them. All I need is I can change myself only.
Okay, thank you, Acharya.
Sir, what could be the reason of not sharing chappals and the mat?
It's very personal. Like don't. That's why he says your own. To some extent, this is what Amit is talking about. These are traditions. Like these are very personal belongings. You don't share them. Like somebody sitting on you're using the mat by sitting on it. You're using the chappal in direct contact with your skin. So if you're using somebody else's chappals, you don't know whether that skin has any disease or not, whether you'll get it or not. All the very personal hygiene only, essentially. Just like not sharing underclothes.
Another question, Acharya ji, a little technical. The way they have described darbha grass, then mrugaginam, and then the cloth. So in today's world, can we also add a yoga block on that, so that the asanas or meditation can be a bit longer, can sustain the sitting posture there?
You mean a cushion?
Yeah, something just to keep a little hips a little high, so the meditation can
anything
be
that makes you comfortable is fine. Anything.
Okay.
The idea is that ideally when you see yoga is to be done without anything. Okay, it's only your body supposed to be in play traditionally. Yoga mat is a later addition. Yoga blocks are later additions. If you are a forest dweller, what do you have? You have the grass in front of you and you have a body. That is why these traditional things are there. But if it makes you comfortable, why not?
Okay, and another question in the same context, is there any prescribed sitting posture like Padmasana or Swastikasana that we are recommended to sit in?
Well, you need to wait till a few more verses. In fact, next verse itself. So we'll talk about the posture at that point of time.
Okay.
Acharya ji. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So in the first line, Tatraikagram Manaha, Mana is it being referred to as a karta? And why is there that?
It's kritva. Kritva means to make the mind one ekagraham. There's no karta over there. Tatra ekagraham manakritva. Sitting on that seat, make your mind one pointed.
So why is mana having the I forgot the reference in Sanskrit. Usually when it's a person, you have the halanta after the shabda.
Mana is a subject over here, Visarga. Mana is a subject. Sitting in this posture, the mind is to be made one-pointed. So Mana is a subject, and it is Prathama Vibhakti.
Prathama Vibhakti.
It is Mana. He is not saying you make the mind one-pointed. If you had said that, then you would be the subject. You say Tatra Ekagra Manakritva. Having been seated in the posture, the mind is to be made one-pointed. Literal translation. Subject is the mind. And therefore it is got a Visarga after it.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Acharya, I had a question regarding the the darba grass. We see that even in a lot of homas. I mean, nothing is complete like without a darba grass. Is there any specific reason why?
All Karmakanda. Karmakanda says you have to use that grass.
Yeah. Okay.
So you follow it. The words of the Veda are never to be taken lightly. So when it says darba grass, you use darba grass.
Thank you.
Okay, so with this we'll stop. Thank you for your patience. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience. Om
Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you.